My name is Sophia Chu, and I want to invite you to listen in to this edition of the Creating Legacy Through Community Service program. I have a wonderful guest with me today. I've known this man for a long time. Yes, I have been in Metro Detroit for a long time. But this is a gentleman that let me realize that when you talk about Caribbean region, don't just say islands. You need to say Caribbean countries because we are so much more than the islands that others are aware of. So, what I'm going to do now is to introduce you to a very good friend of mine. I'm going to ask him to give us his name and his birthplace.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Blair Thompson, and I'm from Guyana, South America, located on the northeastern tip of South America.
So, why is that considered a Caribbean country?
Well, geographically, Guyana is not in the Caribbean, but culturally, it certainly is because we share all the cultures of the other Caribbean countries and West Indian Islands. So, if you recall, in the days when we had cricket, Guyana was a part of the West Indies. Okay, when we had soccer, Guyana was a part of the West Indies team. So Guyana has always been culturally linked to the Caribbean. And it probably is because Guyana is the only English-speaking country in South America.
All right. So, can you give me a few fun facts about Guyana?
A few fun facts.
Tell them about Pepper Pot. Tell them about Pepper Pot.
Well, a few fun facts about Guyana. Guyana is notorious, famous and infamous, I should say, because famous for the fact that, as I said before, it's the only English-speaking country in South America. Infamous because of the Jim Jones incident.
That's
That
right.
we had, whereby, we allowed Jim Jones to bring his brigade to Guyana, relocate in Guyana, and then have everybody drink Kool-Aid that was laced with cyanide.
Yeah.
That was one of the saddest moments in the history of the country.
Wow. But you still didn't tell them about Pepper Pot.
Oh, well, Pepper Pot, we've got some famous dishes, Pepper Pot being one. And Pepper Pot is a concoction of different meats that's cooked in a sauce called casarep. And casarep is made from the cassava root. This is basically a dish that was created by the Amerindians in Guyana. And it's been claimed as one of the national dishes of Guyana. We also have dishes like metangi. I don't know if you've...
No, we can't stop right there because you're getting me hungry. You are getting me hungry. I didn't know all that about Pepper Pot, but I can just tell you it is absolutely delicious.
Yes.
So we're going to get to the conversation at hand.
Okay.
How did you get to Metro Detroit and why did you decide to stay? So you can give us a year, you can give us the reasons why you came here, whether it's for family or school, and then tell us why you decided to stay.
Well, I relocated to the Michigan area in 1977. And that was the year that I graduated from college. When I graduated, I got 3 job offers. And I decided to pick the one that was given to me by Ford Motor Company. It wasn't the best offer, but my goal was to relocate to somewhere outside of the tri-state area because I wanted to raise my kids outside of that area. I felt that living in that area, there were too many distractions.
Tri-state as in, New York tri-state. Okay.
New York tri-state area.
Okay.
So I decided, well, I was going to pick Michigan to work for Ford Motor Company for 2 reasons. One was I always wanted to attend and do my master's at a school like Michigan. And that gave me the opportunity to do that. And the second was the opportunity to relocate, to move out of the tri-state area. I did get offers from other companies, but
Mm-hmm.
I figured Michigan was probably the best.
Okay.
So I moved my family to Michigan in '77.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the reason I stayed was, when I first got to Michigan, when I first took that offer, I couldn't figure, I asked myself, what the hell does an electrical engineer do at Ford Motor Company?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know, but nevertheless I came. It turned out that we were heavily into electronics. That was when electronics really got going on cars.
Mm-hmm.
And they were looking for engineers, electrical engineers, to design all of the electronic hardware, the computers, do the programming,
Mm-hmm.
write the code. And after I got entrenched within the company, then I realized, yes, this is really a place where electrical engineers can really go far. I I decided to stay hang around in the Michigan area because of I guess the growth that I saw within the company. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I saw an opportunity to grow. I completed my master's, and then I got promoted,
Okay.
and that was I
So
guess
that was the only reason why you stayed?
uh, there might have been other reasons. Those were the main reasons. There might have been other reasons, but I did manage when I got here to hook up with I guess people from the Caribbean. I met.
Okay, don't go too far into that yet. But I'm
Yeah.
glad you touched on it. Don't go too far into that.
Right.
That might have been one of the reasons.
Okay, okay. I was coming around to that.
Right.
So you are a part of all of the great innovation with Ford Motor Company when
Right.
it comes to the electronics and the new cars, right?
Right.
So we're going to move a little bit, maybe a little right, to talk about your history of your introduction to the local Caribbean community in Metro Detroit. Tell us a little bit about, one, how you got introduced to the community, and two, some of the cool things that you learned or you were a part of in the community.
Well, as I recall, while working at Ford, um, my wife learned that one of her friends from back home also lived in Michigan, and her husband happened to be working at Ford Motor Company.
Wow.
So I guess I got introduced to him.
Mm-hmm.
I met him, and we struck up a relationship.
So this was another Guyanese?
This was another Guyanese.
Okay.
And, one night he said to me, I want to take you by this West Indian club.
Okay.
And I went with him, and that was my introduction to the West Indian American Association, the hall,
You remember what year that was?
That was around 1978.
Okay.
Okay. And we went in there. It was, the same building that stands today. And there was this gathering in the basement.
Mm-hmm.
There was music, a lively crowd. And, I got introduced to different people from different countries, Jamaica, Trinidad. And I learned that there was a cricket club
Mm-hmm.
around in Michigan. There was a soccer club in Michigan. And I said, well, okay. These are the kinds of activities that I think I want to get involved with. So that's how I got to learn about the first West Indian organization in Michigan. And then I heard about this. I didn't hear about it through my friend. I heard about it. I met another colleague on the job,
Mm-hmm.
a guy named Bill Andrews,
Wow.
and he was a technician working for Ford.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me about what was going on around in the West Indian community.
Mm-hmm.
And he introduced me to some other people. I got to meet Ira Charles, okay, and then Ira told me about this group that was called the CCC. At the time, the name was the CCC.
What does the CCC stand for?
It was the Caribbean Cultural Committee.
Okay, all right.
And so I decided I was going to, I guess, attend one of their meetings, just to check them out, see what was going on. I attended the meeting, and, they talked about carnival, having a carnival. I think I was around 1978, 1979. At the time, Ira Charles was the chairperson of the committee.
Okay.
And then that year, I think, was the first year that they ever had what became known as a Caribbean festival in the Detroit area. And subsequent to that, they changed the name of the organization from CCC to CCCO.
Okay.
And CCCO meaning Caribbean Cultural and Carnival Organization.
Okay.
And Ira continued to be she was the president for the next 2 years. And then I succeeded her as the president of the organization.
So you were a part of CCCO that long?
Yes.
So that had to be like 81, early 80s.
Yes. In the early 80s, I became president. And I must say that during my tenure, and I'm not really boasting, but we had some of the best carnivals within the city of Detroit. We had carnivals that would head down Jefferson Avenue and end on Belle Isle.
I remember those.
Okay. We had carnivals that would go the other way in Jefferson and end at the Hart Plaza.
From Shane.
Yes.
Yes.
Then we had carnivals that would then start at, after the police, I guess, had a problem with us on Jefferson because we would hold up traffic and block traffic, and they decided to relocate the festival to Woodward.
I remember that.
Okay. So
from Mac, right?
Yes. So we then started the festival at Mac and Woodward, and then went all the way down to the Hart Plaza.
Yep, I remember that.
But the first couple of years, we didn't go to the Hart Plaza. The first couple of years, we stopped at what used to be the Kern Block. And the Kern Block is right opposite what used to be Kennedy Square.
Okay. I'm not familiar with that, but
it's no longer named Kennedy Square, but it's
it's like where Cadillac Square is?
Yes.
It's
Cadillac Square.
Because Cadillac Square runs into Woodward.
You know where Monroe is, where Woodward intersects with Monroe.
Yeah.
Right in that
Cadillac
area,
is the next one though.
Right in that area we had the Kern Block, and we had some very.
So give me some examples or some names of some artists that performed during the festival, because I know back then we used to have the big dogs come out. Some of the soca artists, calypso artists, dancehall artists, reggae artists that used to perform in those festivals.
Well, the big artists, they started coming when we moved to Hart Plaza.
Right?
When we moved to Hart Plaza is when we I guess at that point in time we started getting grants that were, I guess, big enough for us to afford to bring, big artists from Trinidad and Jamaica. But before then, we had groups, not vocal groups, but we had groups of paraders coming in from Toronto.
I remember that.
From
because Caravana is the week before.
Yes, Caravana was the week before. And at the time, during that time, we had groups that would, after Caravana in Toronto, the next week they would then travel to Detroit and participate in our parade. We had the same mass men that today put on these huge, carnivals in Toronto, like Eddie Merchant and Saldana.
Yeah, I remember that name, Saldana.
All those guys would send costumes and actually people had to wear the costumes, and they would come to Detroit, and it used to be
it was phenomenal.
It was phenomenal.
Yeah.
It was phenomenal. And I regret that today we don't have anything close to that. That's one of my pet peeves right now.
So outside of the cultural event, the carnival that you mentioned that we used to have the second weekend of August every year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me some of the other cultural events or cultural activities that stick in your mind to kind of tell about the richness of the Caribbean community here in Metro Detroit.
Well, if CCCO,
Mm-hmm.
the name CCCO,
Mm-hmm.
Caribbean Carnival and Cultural Organization.
Mm-hmm.
So at that time, we decided that there needed to be a cultural component to what it is we did.
Mm-hmm.
And that cultural component should also encompass something educational,
Mm-hmm.
where people would learn about the history of the different countries in the Caribbean. We had events like plays
Mm-hmm.
that we would, I guess, sponsor and coordinate and manage. I recall the last one we had was at the West Indian American Association Hall. And in that one, we try to capture scenes that were typical scenes from islands and
Mm-hmm.
countries in the Caribbean. Okay. We would have receptions,
Mm-hmm.
and for these receptions, we would invite dignitaries from the various countries. We had dignitaries from Trinidad, we had dignitaries from Barbados,
Mm-hmm.
dignitaries from Guyana, dignitaries from Jamaica.
Mm-hmm.
And if we couldn't have a dignitary, we would have some kind of a representative from that country to attend a reception, and thereby share amongst ourselves some of the rich culture
Mm-hmm.
that we had here, that we brought here, from our homelands. And those are events that we would have yearly, conduct yearly, sponsor yearly
Mm-hmm.
here in the Detroit area.
Okay. So one last component of the conversation that we want to have with you is around, I know you were or still are, or I'm hoping that you are, a part of the African Caribbean Chamber of Commerce. So if you could tell us a little bit about what the vision or the hope was behind creating that Chamber of Commerce, and just if you could just also tell us a little bit about what's going on with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe we can even use this platform to allow other people that want to be a part of that organization or a part of that chamber to give them some insight as to
Mm-hmm.
what the vision is for that chamber.
I would say around 2009,
Mm-hmm.
I guess, we had a lot of layoffs within the automotive industry. We had, I think it was a minor recession in the country around that time. I think, every 7 years or so, we have this economic downturn within
Okay.
the country.
Okay.
And during one of the downturns, it was recognized that we had people that weren't working, and people who had been working who were laid off.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, at that time, there was what is today called UACO,
Right.
which is the United
African.
Community Organization.
Okay. So it was a coalition of African organizations? Is that what it was?
UACO, yes. UACO
Okay.
is a coalition of African organizations.
Okay.
And within UACO, we had a Caribbean component.
Okay.
And it was decided that one of the I guess, activities that we need to get involved in is trying to help those, I guess, people from the diaspora, from Africa and Caribbean diaspora, to actually get back on their feet. Especially the ones who had lost jobs,
Mm-hmm.
the ones who weren't employed, the ones
Mm-hmm.
who were looking for some, I guess, way to elevate themselves.
Okay.
Or to grow their business.
Okay.
So what was created at the time was the African Caribbean Chamber of Commerce.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that organization was really set up to ensure that members got an opportunity to actually network and collaborate with various businesses, whether they were African, Caribbean, or American.
Mm-hmm.
If they happen to have a business, okay, they would also get the opportunity to grow that business.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if they wanted some training in action in a way to allow them to get employed by some business, then there was some kind of an opportunity. We would show them areas or help to steer them to the various opportunities there were for classes
Mm-hmm.
and education,
Mm-hmm.
so that they could position themselves to be, able to step into some of those positions.
Mm-hmm.
That was the intent.
Okay.
So we started this organization, and I was one of the founding members of the, not the founding members, but I was there initially.
Okay.
And so we started this organization. We decided to have member groups, whether they were individuals or they had businesses,
Mm-hmm.
get together. We would have monthly meetings, and at the meetings, we would invite business people to come in or politicians to come in and
Mm-hmm.
actually talk about opportunities that are out there
Mm-hmm.
that members may want to have to seize,
Okay.
to step into.
Mm-hmm.
That was the beginning. The beginning was just to ensure that people understood what opportunities are out there. And so we would have presenters from the banks, the various banks in the areas, the various businesses in the areas.
Mm-hmm.
They would come into our meetings and actually describe what it is they perceived as opportunities that our members could grab onto.
Got it.
Okay.
Got it.
And then we started growing from that point. From that point, we started growing into actually having workshops. And the workshops would be to invite people who could come in and provide training to our members, teach them how to write business plans,
Mm-hmm.
how to apply for loans,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
what lenders were out there that they could actually collaborate with, if they were interested in getting loans. Those were, we would have workshops like quarterly.
Okay.
And the quarterly workshops would actually were very successful, because at the time we had approximately 100 members.
Very nice.
We didn't have 100 members attend every meeting,
Mm-hmm.
but on our roster we had
okay.
approximately 100 members. And frequently we would have these business people, politicians,
Mm-hmm.
or the movers and the shakers within the Detroit area come in and actually talk to us, talk to the groups, give them some enlightenment.
I remember working with you guys on one project that you did where you had that marketplace
Yes.
set up at the International Institute, which I thought was just a phenomenal event. So are those still things that are in the making for the growth of the chamber now?
Well, we somehow, due to a number of reasons that I really don't want to get into, we began losing members.
Mm-hmm. But looking towards the future, just being optimistic for the future. These are things that the chamber would hope to come back to, right?
Yes.
Which is the hub for.
We're currently, what we're trying to do is rebrand the organization.
Okay.
Okay. And the rebranding of the organization, let me describe the organization a little bit. What we have are business entities,
Mm-hmm.
which we call management entities. We have what you can think of as an umbrella entity.
Okay.
And that umbrella entity is the chamber,
Mm-hmm.
and member businesses actually belong to the chamber. But then we have a nonprofit entity. And a nonprofit entity, the responsibility of that entity is to actually go out there and seek funding for whatever programs we develop
Got it.
within the chamber.
Got it.
And then we had what also is an LLC
Mm-hmm.
for profit.
Okay.
And that entity is I guess, the goal, the responsibility of that entity is to go out there and put on programs
Mm-hmm.
that also bring money into, but this would be for profit,
Okay.
profit events.
Okay.
And that's basically the structure of the organization. Now, what we have learned though is that the way the organization should really be structured is to have the nonprofit be the umbrella and have the other entities work and collaborate with the nonprofit, because the nonprofit is the entity that's really bringing in the funds,
Mm-hmm.
getting the grants,
Mm-hmm.
ensuring that the other entities have strategic plans
Right.
that describe the various events, activities, and
Mhm.
programs that we would like to have sponsored.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to sponsor those programs,
You need
you
funding.
need funding.
Right. Absolutely.
So that's the rebranding that I talked about earlier.
Okay.
And right now, that's what we're trying to do. We have just completed the bylaws for the nonprofit. We wrote the bylaws. We revised the bylaws for the chamber itself, which
Okay.
is what I called earlier the umbrella
Mm-hmm.
entity. And what we're going to be looking to do is to bring in fresh, new people with new ideas,
Okay.
people who are, I guess, motivated
Mm-hmm.
and committed to working with us, to elevating the organization to the level that we can actually become, I guess, at the same level as similar organizations. You look at Access, you look at the Spanish
Right.
Chamber
The
of
Hispanic
Commerce.
Chamber of Commerce.
Like the other chambers.
Even the
of commerce.
Detroit Regional Chamber of Commerce,
yes,
right?
Yes. We looking to elevate our organization so we can actually approach that level.
And create legacy for our community.
Yes.
So just to wrap us up now, we talked a lot about some of the events and organizations that you were a part of here in the Caribbean community in Metro Detroit itself. I want you to put your dreaming hat on, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want you to see where you want us to be in the future by telling us what are some of your hopes and your dreams for the Caribbean community here.
Well, if you really look at what the reality is, and I usually caution people when they compare Detroit, the Caribbean community in Detroit, with the Caribbean community in Toronto,
Anywhere
or
else,
New York,
anywhere else.
it's not the same.
Absolutely.
Our community is not as big, and we don't have the unity within the community that you find in New York or you would find in Toronto. Okay, so if you understand that, then you'd also understand that for us to actually be successful in anything we do, we have to involve the Detroit. We have to involve the greater Detroit community at large.
Okay.
So, what I noticed that most of the ethnic Caribbean and African communities have been doing have been to stay amongst themselves. Most of the events that I have attended, if it's a Jamaican event, you see a lot of Jamaican folks. If it's a Trinidadian event, you see a lot of Trinidadian folks. If it's a Guyanese event, well, you see a lot of Guyanese. And not that that's a bad thing, but we don't have the size among these individual ethnic groups to be able to put on large events like you see in New York or Toronto. So my dream and my hope is that this can be recognized not just by the people that I'm working with currently, but the community at large. That what we need to do is be inclusive of the Detroit community when we plan our events. Okay, we need to collaborate with community groups within the gleaners. Okay, we need to have, I guess, events whereby we collaborate with gleaners, help to serve food to the Detroit community. And there are many other organizations within the Detroit community we can collaborate with, but make them part of what it is we do. And if we do that, okay, we can be just as successful as any of the other festivals we see at Hart Plaza, the Hoedown, and all of the other festivals. When you go there and you find 300,000 people, okay, we can be just as successful. But we need to involve the communities. When we have something, get them involved. That's number one. Number two, if you look at today, you look at most of the ethnic Caribbean. I'm going to stick to the Caribbean. Caribbean groups.
Okay.
If you look at the Caribbean groups, you find that you don't have young people in strategic positions in these groups. Okay.
Got you.
It's the old vanguard, and the old vanguard is trying to make things work. Okay, and when the old vanguard tries to make things work, then people, some people support, most people don't. Okay, so our events don't turn out to be as successful as we would like them to be. What I keep preaching is to get the millennials, the Gen Z folks intimately involved in what it is we do. And when I say intimately involved, I don't mean plan it for them or plan it with them. Let them empower them. Let them go off and plan the events, okay, and hold those events, and then look at how successful they can be. When we start to do that, then we are going to start to see, because the young people are the ones that are moving today. It's the young people who are spending the money, okay, and the young people who are getting things done around here in this area. So if you want to get them involved, don't control. What you want to be able to do is empower them. You listen, you support, and you provide guidance. Don't control. Okay? And that's what I've been preaching. Okay? And I hope that people are listening to what it is I'm saying.
Well, I do listen, because you're one of the reasons why, I was able to step up in some of those roles. And you allowed me to be guided by you. You taught me, you were there to make sure that I didn't fall on my face. And I do appreciate you for that, because look at me now, but we're not talking about me. We're talking about you. So again, thank you so, so much for your time. I do appreciate this interview. And are there any closing remarks that you have about anything within reason?
Well, I would like for people to, as a takeaway, okay, to look for announcements of events and programs that are going to be out there advertised by the Chamber of Commerce, the African Caribbean Chamber of Commerce. Okay, watch us. Okay, we have secured a site, a building, which we're going to renovate. We're going to put up the right signage, and then what we want to do is launch the kinds of programs that I have described. So just
So how do we get in touch with you guys? How do we pay attention to what you're doing? Where would we look for that information?
I can give you information on the chamber.
Okay.
Our physical address, our our mailing address.
Okay. I can put those as links in the video.
Yes, please do.
So yeah, your
Please
email
do.
address and any other pertinent
And
information
some
that you
names,
have.
names of key directors
Okay.
who are actually doing all of the heavy lifting right now.
Okay.
And you raise a good point. We need to get to a point where we have out there our website, okay, that people can actually, as they've done in the past, log into and access information about what it is we're all about, what it is we're doing, and what it is they can look forward to.
Right. And when can they attend your meetings, or how do
Yes,
they
so
become members?
exactly.
And those kinds
All
of
of the
things.
information.
Okay.
All the information.
We'll be patient with you. We'll be patient with you, Mr. Blair. So thank you again for your time. I do appreciate it. And tune in to our next video. I'm going to leave you guys hanging as to who it's going to be with. So, peace out.
Well, can I say some parting words? I say
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you for allowing me to actually share all this information, and I hope that the listeners, understand what it is I'm trying to describe, where it is I'm coming from, and what it is we have to look forward to.
Absolutely. I will make sure that they know what you're doing.
Thank you very much.
Right. Appreciate your time, man.